Hello, everyone. So good to see all those beautiful faces here for what's a truly important and relevant conversation today. I want to thank again our sponsor, Yoga Alliance, for specifically sponsoring this community conversations, very important conversation. And I want to introduce to you now our moderator. We are honored to have Quentin here, the Vice President of Yoga Alliance and the founder. He will be moderating this very special community conversation about the importance of yoga in communities of color.
My name is Quentin Vinny. I'm the Vice President of Yoga Alliance Foundation, and it is an honor and a privilege to be here having this conversation. We have some incredible individuals on this stage that I'm blessed to share this space with. I find it to be very important for us all to understand that yoga isn't just a bunch of physical poses and motions and movements. It's essentially how we show up in the world, how we choose to live our lives every day, how we treat others, how we treat ourselves. And unfortunately, one of the things that I'm often asked whenever I go out and I give speeches, keynotes, or interviews, who needs yoga the most? And I often say that it's those that aren't getting it. So this conversation, my plan is for it to be less of we talk, you listen, and more of an actual community conversation. I want engagement from everyone, not just everyone on this stage. I find it important to find a level of relatability in this practice, right? We all come to yoga and have found yoga for a multitude of reasons. I want to start off by essentially sharing my yoga story and what got me to yoga. And as my panelists, my incredible panelists, take the opportunity to share who they are and what they do, they will also share their experiences and what brought them to yoga. And then we want to open up an opportunity for dialogue and conversation. Does that sound good? Yes. Awesome. So I'm not from New York. I love New York. I'm not from here. I was born and raised in Baltimore. Anybody that's ever been to Baltimore, show of hands? Okay, awesome, excellent. When I was growing up, Baltimore was known as the heroin capital of America, and unfortunately, it's still one of the most dangerous cities in this country. And my father was a heroin addict, so I was raised by a single mom. I went to schools that were dominated by people who did not look like me. So in addition to experiencing extreme levels of poverty and growing up in a community full of dilapidation and under-resourced, schools and businesses and communities, I experienced a lot of racism. I experienced a lot of racial divide, a lot of prejudice, a lot of just overall injustices. And when I was 14, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression and was told that I'd need to be on medication for the rest of my life if I wanted to live some level of normalcy. Fortunately, at that time, my mom rejected that idea, so I went the next 16 years of my life, essentially trying to figure it out. But when I was 26, I had 2 kids already. I was running a personal training business in Baltimore County, and I was diagnosed with severe generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and mild to severe major depressive disorder. I spent 2 years addicted to prescription medication. I attempted suicide twice, and I survived an accidental overdose before I realized that my life had some kind of value, and I figured that out through the practice of yoga. I celebrate 7 years of sobriety this year in 2 months. Thank you. Once I realized the importance that yoga played in my life, I made it a mission for me to be able to share this practice with as many people as possible. And that's a lot of the work that I'm doing currently with Yoga Alliance Foundation. We're really dedicated to showing up differently and to making this practice more equitable and more accessible to all of us, because yoga is a practice for all. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? So my name is Kawan Douglas. I own a studio called Merge New York in Soho. It's been open for about 8 or 9 months, and it's pretty much my dream come true. I was born in Newark, New Jersey. Are you familiar with Newark? Hood life, brick city, So I grew up in an environment and just grew up in a place where I was always trying to fit in. And I always felt like an outsider. I was like, all right, okay, I'm black, even though people are like, Newark is super diverse. It is, but you still have to try to find a semblance of who can you relate to. Then, hey, I'm gay, surprise. So I was like, oh, damn, you put yourself in another box. But then I'm like, not gay enough to hang with the queens. I'm not straight enough to hang with the straight people. My black ass is an outsider again. Then it's like, but you're a man. I'm a short man. What woman wants this? Really? You know, the women love me though, you know, because the gay best friend. So a lot of my life has been like, where do I belong amongst everyone around? And I found my way into yoga, one, because I needed something that was really cheap exercise, and I found a studio that was $5. I was like, you can do this. Then after 6 months, they raised it to $6, and I was like, now you're gonna make me break a 10? I don't think so. Eventually, it went up to 14, and then 20, I said, oop, my ass is not gonna be up in this place anymore. So then I volunteered there and got some free yoga. From a volunteer into working the front desk, into paying for teacher training, where I ate beans and rice for 3 months. No lie, that's it. That's it. I was like, use $10 to get some veggies, you're good to go. But I saved up $2,500 to become a yoga teacher, worked my way up, and became a senior teacher, traveled around this city, teaching at a lot of the premier studios, and amongst that I was like, okay, you finally found a community of people that are receptive to you, or so I thought. Because I started to look around and realize, like, you're the only one like you. Short, black, gay, you're othered. So my dream was kind of like, all right, whoever's feeling marginalized, whoever's feeling like an outsider, you should have a place to go. So I literally took 2 weeks off of teaching. I took my life savings and I was like, go on Craigslist and find a space. And I did. And now I feel like that's what my life's work is. It's like making sure everyone fits in. So we have this discussion, it's about, you know, how do we be inclusive? How do we embrace diversity? My thing is, we can't really say we've embraced it until it's no longer a part of the conversation. So our job now is to bring more attention and awareness to it. And yes, we want to empower women, we want to empower people of color, we want to empower the LGBT community, but we don't need to separate everyone and segregate everyone. So my goal was create a space where you all walk in, no matter what your size is, no matter how old you are, you belong. And I think that's the next step that we're trying to go to as a yoga community, as a wellness industry. So thank you all.
So my name is Erica Garcia, and yep, my studio is Nueva Alma in Yonkers. I'm the introverted Bronx Puerto Rican. And I remember 3 years ago when they were doing SOULFest, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry, you're in Harlem and you don't have me? Oh, no, that's not happening, right? So I found yoga when I was 16. I'll be 48 this year in like 2 months. So I've been doing yoga for 32 years. And I started out, actually as a kid, I was a gymnast, and then when I was 15, my mom, you know, a single mom, and she was like, no more gymnastics for you, we can't afford this shit. Oh, and I curse, sorry. So I found what I realize now, decades later, that it was Light on Yoga, and it just didn't have the cover because somebody ripped it off, because if you returned it to the New York Public Library and it didn't have that little sticker thing, then you couldn't return it. And I realized now that here I was, you know, with Light on Yoga years later. And I'll always remember, I think I was like 17, 18 at that time, and my grandma was like sipping her Bustelo. She was like, Niña, what are you doing? And I was like, this yoga thing. And then she was like, I'm going to say it in Spanish, because she was like, ay, mija, tú estás bien equivocada. Cuando yo dije, tú eres blanca, negra, india, eso no son los indios de nosotros, right? So basically, she basically said, you know, as a Puerto Rican, you're white, black, and Indian. She was like, honey, you got the wrong Indians. Those weren't our Indians. Put the book down. And I was like, but I like this, right? So here I am, 30 years later. I've been teaching for 10. I used to run New York City's region for Yoga for Youth, and I used to go into the jails. I used my yoga to heal my body. What people don't realize is that at 24 years old, I got diagnosed with MS. And I never have taken a drug. And it has never progressed. I've had 5 attacks, I've been hospitalized 5 times, and I've had to rebuild my body. Usually it's my right side, 5 times. And I've never taken a single drug. And I grew up from a culture where I thought my grandmother and her sisters were crazy, because when I opened up their medicine cabinets, there were mason jars with dried leaves, and it was Ayurveda. And they were teaching me since I was a young girl. So I told the neurologist back then, you and I have a deal. We're gonna try it my way first, and then we'll try it yours. And I've never done a drug. And then I became a 9/11 survivor at 24. So again, I used my yoga to heal me from trauma. So I understand that everybody walks in with different levels of T, big T, little t, graffiti T, whatever it is. And I know that the yoga is what has saved me, and I know that I will save others. Hence the reason why my studio is called Nueva Alma, because I manage souls. And that's what the yoga does, okay? And that's where the healing needs to take place. So this conversation is very important, but I also challenge each and every one of you to stand tall unapologetically in your truth, because it is through all of you that they will see why the yoga works and why we need it, all of us. And that's why I opened the studio, because I don't play nice in the sandbox. I knew they weren't gonna tell me what to do, and it wasn't gonna happen, because I was gonna open some place where everyone, like we've all said and echoed, is welcome, and there's no competition, there's no ego. It's not all about that. I care what's in here and what's in here, and then we'll talk about it, because asana's the third branch anyway. We need to go dial it back to the first two limbs anyway, which is just be a good human being, and be okay with who you are. You know what I mean? We're all perfectly imperfect, and that's what you got to dial it back for to move forward. So fast forward, I now am a teacher trainer. Some of my teachers are here as volunteers. And then after Maria, because again, I'm Latina, I created a foundation. So I have my school, I have the studio. And then after Maria, I created Save a Soul Foundation, which is a foundation to go and give human services, not only to the volunteers, not only to the people that need it in disaster areas, but also the people that are serving them. So we took our first pilgrimage trip last June, and I look forward to doing more work, and then taking the excess and doing exactly what Lara's done, do some local stuff, but also take it outside, because again, we just need to touch other souls. And that's it. Oh, and I work a full-time job doing all of it. So if you have dreams, there's enough hours in the day when you're stepping true in your Dharma and in your faith, God will open the doors, and he will create more hours in the day. Because the shit that I get done in 24 hours, you have no idea. But you know what? It's because I was saved for a reason, so I gotta make it happen, and I don't waste a single day. And neither one should any of you. Okay.
I'm Lara Land. I am one of the producers of the festival. I came to yoga over 20 years ago. I was a theater kid, theater dork, and I found yoga through preparing to go on stage and getting the voice to resonate. I think a lot of people find yoga through the arts. Long story, but I went all over the world studying yoga, India, then teaching yoga in India and Rwanda for a long time, many years, taking many trips. I would work with HIV positive women and children, and I saw the power of yoga to really heal. And that was a real eye-awakening thing for me to see just how powerful this practice is to people that have been through trauma, have been through injury, physical, emotional. And when I came back from that, I just wanted to share that so passionately. And I opened a yoga studio here in Harlem called Land Yoga. And the idea was that when you enter the space, you just feel like you've arrived, and you can just drop that weight and be there. In our space, it's very individualized teaching. Most of our classes, you actually do the practice with your own breathing at your own pace. So we have people that are in a chair, against the wall, on the ground, standing. We have people with 30, 40 years of age difference between them in one class, which is a beautiful thing to witness. So we adapt the practice to the person and for the person, instead of trying to put the person into a group practice. But I wasn't satisfied with that. I felt like there were still a lot of people that we weren't able to touch through the studio, just for the main fact that some people don't feel comfortable to walk into a yoga studio. Some people don't feel welcome in a yoga studio. And some people, through what may have started as an innocent endeavor to get people excited and inspired about yoga, think now that yoga means you have to look a certain way, you have to do a certain pose, and that sort of thing that I want to hope started as let's inspire people has now turned into something that's quite dangerous, where that's yoga. And as Erica said, yoga is, and I have always used this hashtag, all 8 limbs. There's 8 limbs of yoga. So I've been trying to explain about the 8 limbs of yoga for over 8 years since I opened Land Yoga to try to re-educate like person by person that walks by the studio of what yoga is, and try to break through that idea, that misconception that if I'm not flexible, I can't do yoga. Or if I'm too old or whatever reason, everyone can breathe. Everyone can do yoga. So I formed a nonprofit called 3.5 Acres Yoga, and I did that in order to be able to reach people in the community that I wasn't able to reach through the studio. And what we do is we go to other nonprofits and we add yoga to the services that they offer. Kawan, yeah, like you were saying about, there's a lot of nonprofits out there which are like very specific, like it's yoga for sexual trauma or yoga for abuse. What we wanted to do is say, like, we not identify you by like your trauma or your otherness. It's like everyone, you know, that just didn't feel they had a space. And so we're here at Harlem Hospital, where we work with people who have mental challenges. We work with the elderly at the food bank. We go to women's shelters. We work with youth in the community. Some of you might have seen that we do some really deep work between young adults and cops here in Harlem, and trying to create a little piece there, bringing yoga where it hasn't been before.
And let's give her some love, because without her, none of this would be possible. So.
Hello, happy Saturday. My name is Bree Skullark, and I am really grateful to be here today. This is my first time at SOULFest. I'm born and raised in Harlem, so I'm home right now. I feel really good. I was born in Harlem Hospital on the 8th floor. I've been here since 1985. It's nice to see yoga at the State Building. Just a little bit about me. I started my first career as a model. I started on America's Next Top Model, Cycle 5 and Cycle 17. And, you know, for me, at the top of my career, which I worked very hard to get to, especially just be from Harlem. I never really thought that I would make it that far anyway. And I had found myself in Los Angeles, California, and really successful. I was very unfulfilled. I was very self-important, and I was very unhappy. And so, God willing, this year I'll have 8 years of sobriety. I got some sober friends here today. And I came home. And I didn't know what I was gonna do. I knew that where I came from, it afforded me a lot of money, a really great lifestyle, but I had no quality of life. At 26, I knew something had to shift, and I really didn't know what that was. So I came home, I started a teacher training on the Upper East Side, and it's called Pure Yoga. Oh, you guys know Pure? Really, I went for the steam room, if I could be, okay. And I stayed. Just to give you a really quick, I mean, you know, you've been to the Upper East Side, you know, it's really Upper East Side, right? And so here I am, right? And I had never really seen any African-American yoga instructors, and so I felt really out of place. I'm pregnant, so I'm emotional, but my first time meeting an African-American instructor who had her own yoga studio was Faith. And I couldn't afford her class. I was interning, I was working as a receptionist. And she walked through the door and she had all this curly hair, and just like me at the time. I shaved my head. And I was like, I don't know what you're doing, but please, can I just be a part of it? She was like, girl, you're my guest, come on. And she taught me how to get into an inversion for my first time. And after that, I knew I was very grateful for Pure, but there was an opportunity to be of service because someone was of service to me. Also, I got sober in rehab. Shout out to anybody who can get sober on their own. I'm not that girl. I needed time out. I needed to be sat in a corner and think about my choices. And I had this wonderful Brazilian woman that would come on every Wednesday and teach yoga. And she would come with these little cotton balls of lavender and rub it on us with this little Brazilian music. I still don't know what posture she was doing in class, and it didn't matter. It was another example of someone of service. And so when I graduated with my 200 hour, all the girls in my class were like, I'm gonna do prenatal yoga. I was like, I don't wanna deal with nobody kids, okay? I don't wanna keep them. And they were like, well, I'm gonna teach this type of yoga. And I was like, nothing speaks to me. And, you know, divine intervention. I had gotten called to go to Rikers, a jail on the island, to speak. And so I said, okay, I'll do a speaking engagement at Rikers. From the time I entered the island to the time I left, I got cursed out. And hopefully you've never been to Rikers, but just in case you've had a mishap, it takes a minute for the guard to get to you. So I had plenty of thoughts in my head like, okay, I need to bust out a yoga pose, prayer, something. And I was so fulfilled. I remember there was this old woman there. Why she was about 70 years old, locked up, is none of my business. But she came out of her cot and was like, sign my Bible. And I was like, I'm not signing your Bible. That's sacred. She was like, I just need proof that somebody came here to see us because they wanted to and not because they had to. And I said, all right, I'm teaching yoga in jail. And I have been working in jails, teaching yoga for the past 4.5 years. I teach men, women, the transgender unit. I have the young adult unit. I've taught COs. I've taught, 3 years ago I had the rape unit and pedophile unit. And if you think you can't do something, you know, yoga will always show you that you can. The childlike behavior of a rapist and a pedophile, first of all, was very triggering for me. And it was also the most healing thing I've ever done in my entire life. Anybody who's ever been a substance abuser knows that it's much bigger than our addiction. And sexual abuse is a very large part of my story. And so to teach people who violated me, and many of them on the mat, was the most incredible experience of my life. And so this practice for me is about service. It is not about anything else except service. Right now, I teach a social emotional wellness program in underserved communities to middle school students. People ask me, why you work with middle school? I'm like, I must hate myself because these kids really hate me, Jesus Christ. But you know, if you ever had a kid in the hood, you know, it takes a little trust. I have a program called Urban Peace Squad. I go to Project Housing, I go to Lincoln, I go to Grand over there, and we just bust out yoga poses in the middle of projects, and people laugh, but the laughter gets the conversation started. And once I got you talking, I got you hooked. So, you know, we do what we can, and I'm just grateful to be here, so thank you.
Yeah, wow. Just listening to everybody, I'm like so inspired and so moved, and it gives me more energy to continue to do what I do. For those of you that didn't take the class and maybe you're kind of walking in, my name is Faith Hunter, and I started my yoga journey like Erica. I'm 48. My journey to this practice was really about self-healing, and I didn't know even the healing that I needed. When Erica was talking about the big T's and the little T's, my big T happened when I was really young, and it was a big T that happened to our entire family. Both of my brothers were diagnosed with HIV in the 80s. My younger brother was not even 7 years old yet. My older brother was 15 when he found out. We held that as a family, and it's a level of secrecy for a really long time because it was the 80s and everybody knows all the crazy things that were happening, and we were in a small town in Louisiana. I started actually moving into the space of yoga when I was in grad school in New Orleans, and my older brother was actually dying of complications related to HIV. And so one of my friends said one day, she's like, girl, we need some yoga, right? I was like, if it's the stuff that Rodney Yee does on PBS, not really. I was like, I'm like, he's at a beach, we're in New Orleans, and I'm sorry, I don't have mountains behind me, and he's just stretching, so that's not gonna provide me any calm and, you know, and sanctity or anything like that. And she's like, let's just go. So I said, okay. So I showed up to this class, and I didn't know what this class was gonna be. For those of you that practice Kundalini yoga, Kundalini was my first practice. It was intense, and I really wanted to walk out, but something, spirit, soul, whatever, said, no, you need to stay here and breathe. And it was painful. And it was not the physical stuff, because I grew up as a dancer and I could deal with physical pain on so many levels. It was the emotional stuff that was coming up. And it was bubbling up so high that literally in my first class I cried. And the teacher was like, it's okay, just breathe. And I was like, okay, I can't. Right? But I'm gonna keep brewing breath of fire. Right? And so I kept showing up, kept going back. My brother passed. I kept practicing. My father passed while I was living in New York in 2001. I kept practicing. And right after my dad died, I was like, whatever is happening, yoga is my lover, my friend, my one and only job that I've ever had in my entire life that I've committed myself to. So I'm gonna keep doing this. But what I'm gonna do, because all my friends were now going, what are you doing differently? And I'm like, just showing up to yoga. Because I could fall apart. I've had so many opportunities to fall apart, but this practice of the breath and connection has held me together in some shape or form and inspired me to keep moving, right? Inspired me to keep moving. So I decided to become a yoga teacher, did that, wasn't sure what I was gonna do, and then I lost my job, I quit, whatever, and it was just, I was like, oh, well, I still have 4 more months in yoga teacher training, I guess I'll become a yoga teacher. Because I really didn't enter it to do that, I was like, I'll just help my friends and just learn more about this practice. Years later, my younger brother, still alive, he moves to Washington, D.C., and I was like, well, maybe I'll move back because he's there. And he goes, yeah, you should teach yoga there. It'll be cool. And I was like, okay. So I go back to D.C., and while I'm there, I'm realizing, and I never had this thought because I grew up in a dance community, and I've always, even though I went to really Afrocentric, private schools and stuff when I was growing up in Louisiana, I never had that thought that I was the only one. But when I moved to DC, I realized I was, especially when I was working for a yoga studio and the studio owner came to me and said, you play your music too loud and you laugh too much. And I was like, I don't ever want to feel like that. And I was like, what student said that, right? And I was like, nah, this environment is not for me. I'm in Chocolate City, right? I'm in DC. So that's when I decided to create a space. And so that was my first yoga studio I had. It was called Shakti. I had a business partner at the time, and both of us wanted to just feel connected because we were 2 sisters starting the first yoga studio that was owned by Black women in DC, Maryland, or Virginia, like the entire DMV. And so life went on, and a couple of years after opening the studio, I was lucky enough to be on the cover of Yoga Journal, which I'm so grateful for because it really opened doors and opened my eyes to all of the need. Because there were other women like me that weren't being served. There were other men and women of color, people in communities that were underserved that needed this practice, needed to feel welcome and connected. And so when my business partner and I split, I decided that I was going to actually open a studio in the heart of DC in a multicultural neighborhood so that we can reach as many people as we possibly can. And like all of the presenters that have studios have been saying, it's about feeling welcome so people can land, people can show up, people can breathe, people can feel comfortable no matter who they are, what they look like. And right now we have Embrace Yoga DC. We've been around for 9 years in the heart of DC. It has been hard because everyone wants to push us out. I've been blessed with a landlord that doesn't care about the space. That's a blessing because he's not charging me the rent that is typically in DC because he still thinks it's 1970. So I'm like, okay, God, I will accept that blessing because obviously I need to keep doing what I do. Thank you. So the other thing that's really crucial and important is like, it's not just about my yoga studio. Our family, my family, both myself and my brother and my mom have been really, really committed to providing other people of service, being of service to other people. And so since my older brother's passing, we created a foundation. We don't really talk about it a lot because it's really about providing healers, regardless if they are physicians going to medical school, if they are teachers serving and they want to educate, because those are healers in our community. It's about creating scholarship opportunities for yoga teachers or Reiki healers. We've created scholarships for people to be of service to their community in some possible way. And we've been doing it really undercover for years. And so I told my younger brother about 2 years ago, I said, we have to let people know what we do because we're doing it for my older brother's passion because he was a doctor. And he stopped taking meds and he died because he wanted to serve and he wanted to deliver babies in East LA. Right? Because he knew that women of color needed him more than anyone because when they're in that state, somebody that loved them needed to be present and care for them. And so our foundation is the Michael Hunter Foundation, and it's about providing healers with opportunities so that they can show up and serve regardless of their economic status, the way that they look, and wherever they are around the world. And so as I was sharing earlier, I'm launching a new platform that's an extension of our studio, and that's a beautiful reflection of what we offer because people are showing up in our space to embrace who they are and to identify and connect to other human beings. And so because I've had this amazing opportunity to be online in a really grand and large way, I felt it was important to not only have my face, because I know from many opportunities that I've had, it's because I've been the token. And I think that is important to acknowledge and important for us to say. And so because I have been the token in so many realms, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to keep my token ass and serve my community in as many ways as I possibly can so that is no longer something that another yoga teacher or another healer has to say. It's just about us showing up, being of service, practicing, healing ourselves, and connecting in community. So what I want you to do is to share your stories with us, because I have a story. All of these human beings across here have a story, and we need, regardless if it's on my platform, on anyone else's platform, in your own way, like even if it's just one person at a time, let people know that you are showing up in this practice with openness, fullness, and truth. And let's do it together. Yeah, let's do it together. Thank you so much.
Every person on this stage and sitting in this audience is breaking the stereotype of yoga. Let's just put that out there, right? Like we all know that there's a specific, this idea of the picture perfect yogi. And I don't think any of us exude those characteristics. So Kwan, Erica, Lara, Bree, Faith, thank you. I'm humbled to be here. I do want to engage everybody or whomever else is willing to share their truth, their stories, their vulnerability, if we do have the time.
Yeah, so we just have about 5 minutes. So I would say maybe 2-3 quick comments, questions.
How many of you are yoga teachers?
Hey.
Yes. How many of you now say, holy shit, I think I could do this? Yes. Then go and do it. Go and do it. Find a teacher, find a training that will embrace you, that you connect with. There are many ways to do it. I have people that volunteer for me for a year to pay for their tuition. There's ways around it. Do not allow yourself to be dim. Your light is needed. Your light is needed, and people need you. Each and every one of you. And then I think now you said you were going to let some of us hear your stories.
Absolutely.
Because It's needed.
It's necessary.
Real quick. Hi, I'm Robin Downs. I'm a certified yoga instructor. I call my style yoga flavor. Not just yoga, also the flavor of life, and there are many different flavors. I'm here with my 85-year-old father. And he's on today. He participated in the session. So I tell all of you to go check on your mama, your auntie, your uncle, whatever, and pull them out and have them do some yoga. Even if it's just sitting in their chair and moving and stretching and breathing, because yoga is for everybody and there's all different flavors.
Thank you so much for sharing.
I'm sorry, my voice is gonna get a little shaky, but I've never been in a yoga space where I felt seen before.
We see you.
Thank you, just thank you. I have a lot more to say, but thank you.
I'm so happy to see all of you here. I just started yoga last year. I'm a liver transplant recipient 10 years out, and I'm just happy to be alive, and I'm happy to be doing yoga. It is so, so therapeutic. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been suffering from mental illness when I was a little kid, but I've been volunteering for NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, for the past 10 years. Not only I've been volunteering, I facilitate a poetry workshop every month, and we're going to be performing at the Poetry Festival at Governor's Island in 2 weeks. And I just want to say, yoga saved my life. It gave me hope. It gave me the comfort that I need to help me get better, so I could. This is the only way that to give me the cope that I need, you know. And I've been coming here to the SOULFest since the very first one I did 2 years ago, and I'm definitely coming back next year.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much on behalf of SOULFest, Yoga Alliance Foundation, and everybody here, Harlem, New York. Thank you. Grateful, appreciative.